or texted to say they may come or they may not. Um, Connie and Kath are going to or at least Connie is. She's not feeling well, so I still invited her to be here and to listen in and not to worry about because she's not feeling well. So we may not see her. Kath, I don't know whether she will be. Hi, Barbara. Um, and but anyway, one of the things about the structure of this course is I decided to do it with a little bit of more old soul nonchalance that I normally would have. And that is to say, I've invited all the participants who have signed up for this or who I invited to just drop in. That you don't have to follow any formal kind of having to be here from class one and so forth. And if you folks all read the flyer, or some of you might have, I will work to post these online to the private Michael Card's YouTube site, so that those who want to watch the previous night's class, they can. So it'll be available to you again beyond just this evening. So I see Jillian checking in, and I want to give a few more minutes here to allow folks to drop in. And but at least it's nice to see that we have a nice group of 9 people. So welcome, Mike, Barbara, Connie, of course, Gene. I said hi to you already. Jillian, Kath, Neil, you're out there. Phil, and of course my sweetie Sarah, who's on with us here tonight. Um, as I said, I'll just wait a couple more minutes. I'll wait one more minute to 5:05, and then we'll let people just drop in. So I don't know. I just wanted to ask, how many of you have your own decks? Okay,
Okay.
great. Terrific. If you have your own deck, I'm gonna, I want to go over some fun ways to use it, and also the point of the deck, the deck and the point of the Michael teaching, as far as I'm concerned, is, how do we make this more tactile and more personal? Um, so hi, Twana Carney, good to have you. I think you probably recognize a few of the faces, but anyway, at some point we'll give each other a chance to say hello and how are yous. Okay, I'll wait. I said I'd give everybody 5 till 5:05, so it's almost 5:05, and then I'll go ahead and formally start.
I like the handout.
Good, good. I did something that is, of course, very unusual for me, and that is I tried to make it short, sweet, and to the point.
Could I hear those words out of your mouth again?
Short, sweet,
Well,
and to the point.
well,
My,
I'm going to keep these with my cards.
yeah,
Well,
the last
good.
that I have is 2 pages, and this one is 12, so it's grown a little bit.
Well, of course, this handout is for the entire course.
Oh, okay.
So I will be referring to it at different times just to remind you it's there.
Okay.
So first of all, everybody, let me go ahead now. It's time. And I just want to welcome you all, and I want to thank you all for coming. I want to acknowledge that this course here in 2025 was inspired by the rather uh, uh, pleasant reception that I received again at the East Coast Michael Gathering in May, when I was moved to just bring everybody decks of cards and just distribute them. I want to just let you know, if any of you, have friends or folks that you feel you'd like to have, a deck sent to. I'm just trying to cover the cost of, my shipping and handling, but it's essentially $15 and for a quote a free deck, or two for that matter, because I could probably send two in the same thing. So anyway, if I just want to cover those costs, but I'm happy to start distributing them. It feels like the gift economy is here, and I want to start adapting to that. which means I'll put the energy out in advance and see what can be, might come around as a result. And it may not be money, it may be other things. So having said that, I want you to understand that again, that I did this in response to the East Coast Michael gathering, um, and and the enthusiasm, and also, I've matured a little bit with the cards. Now, I want to let you guys know something that might surprise you. I developed these cards 10 years ago. They've been around for that long now. And so these decks that many of you, have right in front of you and so forth are not new. And but my use of them and my understanding of them and my interpretation of them has grown and has expanded. But to summarize what I'm hoping to do with this course, and I put some of the high points in those 12 pages that I sent out to all of you, is you're I think everyone here is an actual full-blown, sworn, so to speak, Michael student. That is to say, you all recognize the all the terms that I utilized in the cards. They're all fundamental concept out of the Michael teaching. And what I did is I just transformed them or transposed them into a divination format. Some of you who have done other forms of divination, whether it's tarot, or the I Ching, or um, any number of the newer cards, kind of course options, like the animal cards and the rune cards and what have you, know that they have a central concept, and they often have a positive and negative expression. I will call them in this course illuminated position and shadow position, because I don't believe that even the quote negative poles are necessarily harmful. In fact, I'm going to say that sometimes when you get a negative pole warning, it's suggesting that you really pay attention, that there's something going on around that energy that you might want to, understand, rather than go, oh my God, I'm in fear. The worst thing that we can do, that the consortium has told me, is go into fear of fear itself. We're here to, understand how to use their terminology in a way that is situational, that is languaging in situational terms, and illuminating the circumstances that might be present at any given time. Now, in a few minutes, I'll go through, a couple slides, but here's the main thing that I want to do tonight is, and for every one of these courses, every one of these classes, is I'm going to have each of you, sound out or take a turn, and I'm going to do some readings for you. We're going to do them live, and we're going to co-interpret them. I will, of course, be explaining how I'm interpreting them and how I'm using the tools that I got, um, and how you can use them to, further flesh it out. But before I start, going any further, that's just the kind of general summary of things that I want you to know. For those of you who have your cards, I encourage you to pick them up right now, and just great, you got them in hands, and do whatever. Maybe you've already shuffled them, whatever you've done, but go ahead and just pick a card for tonight, and just pull it out. And I just want you to be able to have a moment and read it for yourself. And notice, I'll tell you some of the ways, as I will throughout this course, some of the ways re-instructing you about how to use it. Okay, first of all, what pole did it come up in? But even before that, what's the center term? What's the center term? Now, obviously, the center term may be a very descriptive noun or verb, or it may be one of the more, kind of esoteric terms. I love Jillian's face, though. So I'm going to start with Jillian because I liked her response. So Jillian, what did you get, and and what poll, and what was the card?
Perseverance.
Perseverance. Okay.
Great day for it.
Okay.
And positive pole, which is persistence.
Okay, very good. Now, you smiled, and I want you all to notice that, ladies and gentlemen, that she had an immediate reaction to her card. And that's something that when you're reading for yourself or you're actually gifting somebody an interactive reading, notice their emotional reactions. So please tell us more, Jillian. What was it that triggered you about that?
We have 3.5 more years of Trump.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. But that's what it was. It's like, okay, it could be a long stretch, but I just need to be persistent, go to rallies, keep doing what I'm doing and do more of it. And yeah, that's what I thought. It's like, do not give up, do not slow down, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Yeah, that's what I thought. And
Great.
And I could have easily gotten the negative one, but I didn't. The negative pull would have been monotony, in which case I would have had to figure out how do I make it more interesting?
Mm,
How do I make it easier for me to keep doing it? And for me, if I if things get monotonous, I need to find a way to make it fun. I'm very simple.
awesome. I want to point out something Jillian did that I encourage you all to do whenever you're, especially when drawing a single card, just as a kind of a reflective input for the moment, is that she read them in both directions. And she
Yeah.
offered herself a contrast. And she came up with a meaningful interpretation on both ends. And I think that is absolutely the best way to use these cards as simple stimulus for your own awareness. Remember, this might be Michael's message to you, but it also might just be your own Rorschach. You'll hear me use that term. Some of you are probably familiar with the historic psychological image test called a Rorschach test. And part of the way I designed these cards had that precept in mind that when you look at the images on these cards, not just the words, but the images themselves, what kind of things jump out of your mind onto the card or into your awareness? And that's absolutely as valid. You don't have to limit your meanings here to the Michael terminology or the Michael context. Now, it's another entire layer or set of layers that you get to draw and rich and harvest from. So that's wonderful, but don't limit yourself to that. Thank you, Jillian. Who else would like to share their card? Kath, you're laughing. Or Barbara. Please, Barbara, you raised so
So
she's good
I
student. She raises her hand. Thank you.
I oh, I didn't do that. I drew the king card.
Ah,
Negative, tyranny.
uh,
And
uh-huh.
my first thought was I was just reading a paper by JP and Mike North about the King year and all
Mm,
that entails. Also, there's also the political thing, but it occurs to me that I've been dealing with somebody this week who is acting in a tyrannical way, saying, this
mm.
is the way it is. We changed the rules. I don't care what you think. New rules, and later this afternoon, I got somebody else who's higher up in that organization who sent out an apology and basically said, "Oops, we should have changed the rules before we implemented this and all this kind of stuff." And so it has multiple levels of connection that I can see at the moment, but it just was kind of a interesting card to pull.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for that, for reporting that. I really appreciate that, both you and Jillian so far. And it looked like Kath, from what I saw on her face, you got something that I call getting gotten. Something got noticed inside of you. And by the way, folks, get the phrase getting gotten is my slang for meaning something got triggered. And it could be humorously triggered, it could be shockingly triggered, it is whatever. But thank you, Barbara. That's great. Anything else before you go? Okay, on to Kath then. Thank you.
First of all, I dropped the freaking cards twice just trying to get one card out. They're a
Uh-huh.
they're slippery. And then I pull suicide.
Oh my.
Self-destruction. Okay.
because I have been throwing myself against a brick wall of WordPress all freaking day. And this is somewhere in self-destruction is where I'm at right now.
That is one of my favorite images, by the way. And if, for those of you who saw what Kath was holding up, it shows a rooster who has been absolutely plucked of its feathers. Now, notice it's not dead, but it feels like it's just been through hell. And I personally have related to that image many times in my lifetime, especially since I'm a triple fire rooster in Chinese astrology. So anyway, all right. So great, Kath. Thank you. I appreciate the fact that you found humor in it. That's terrific. Okay, who else? Anyone else like to just do their card? Mike, I saw you have a reaction earlier.
Oh yeah. Well, oh, go ahead, Gene.
Oh, did Jean, were you up next? I'm
Always
sorry.
reflecting. Yeah, no, I raised my hand. I'm
Okay,
happy to go.
thank you.
So when I pulled this, I laughed. I got Venus and I got it in the negative pole of slovenly. And so, which I find interesting. And what I connect it to is the concept that I am constantly worried that my house looks messy. I mean, is messy and looks messy. And part of that is due to growing up with a parent who is a hoarder. So I have a I don't have a good sense of what's normal and what's not normal. And I'm very interested in being normal, even though I realize there's no normal. So this week has been a particular new round of that. Like, how do I get my house to a stage? And there's nothing wrong with our house. It's not like we've got crap piled everywhere. I just worry. And so I'm trying to get it to the point where I don't worry anymore. And if you walked into my house, I mean, Sarah's been to my house, I don't think you would say, wow, a hoarder lives here. But that's my worry. And so I think I'm in this lifelong battle with myself and my own perceptions. So that's where that comes from, I think.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for the wonderful self-awareness and the narrative that you brought out about this. I think if we can help ourselves to do that, but also help anyone that we're doing a reading for, that is precisely the point. Help develop a narrative so it's out loud and out in the open. Um, Secondly, I want to acknowledge you. You did something that's very important that you'll hear me say often in this course, folks, is think synonyms. Now, notice that Gene went from slovenly to what was the term you used? Messy, I believe.
Messy.
Yeah. And that's a great example of shifting, those are two very synonymous terms, but it's not necessarily the term at the bottom of the card, but it's really the one that applies for you in your circumstance. And so with that, you did it. And I want to just encourage you folks that in using the Michael cards as a divination system, I'm giving you permission to free yourself from the dichotomy of the positive and negative poles in the way that you may be familiar with them simply by, looking at the teachings in a more static way. And that is to use synonyms for the term itself. And when we do sample readings here in the group, you'll often see me shift of the context. And if I were reading for someone, I would say, do you think the word blah, blah, blah works similarly or equally to that poll? And just to see what it might elicit from the other person. Because, many of you are already do counseling of some sort or another, and knowing that it is eliciting information with useful questions to a person. Even if they say, no, not that, quite often that process automatically goes, it's more like and they themselves bring out the next layer of information that might pertain to the card, or maybe not. But nonetheless, that's the helpful facilitation. Now, one other thing I want to show you here, as a resource, as a tool, many of you have, or any of you who have your entire deck should have a copy of what I call the pocket guide. Hopefully you are. I'm holding it up to the screen right now. What I want you to know about the pocket guide is any one of your cards that you were to pick up, you'll notice that the last 2/3 of this little pocket guide literally represent number by number all the cards in the deck. So they start off with 0 at the Tao and then go all the way to the last page, which is 77 or Nexus. Now, the reason I bring it up in the context of talking about synonyms is because you'll notice that if you were to open up to your card or any card for that matter, there is a list of synonyms that occur or appear, I should say, with each of the poles. So if you get stuck for yourself or a person you're doing the reading for, you could say, oh, let's just use the pocket guide as a prompt to see what kind of other words are available to us and see if they have meaning for you. So you can use this interactively. I ever want you to think that you have to follow or construe any of the meanings that I present for you in this as the end all be all, not by any stretch. They are interpretations of whatever the pole is, and they are prompts. And you'll notice the way that many of them are phrased. By the way, some of these I literally just reworked the wording on some of the phrases that I've seen Michael publish in any of the books or in transcripts or that have downloaded through me in readings. And so I've taken them. And so you notice that they're situational commentaries. They're short blurts. Sometimes they're aphoristics. Sometimes they are literally descriptors about the idea itself. Sometimes they'll offer a scenario that suggests, hey, this is what could happen. But anyway, so there is one of the tools that you can always utilize, the pocket guide, but please feel as as a useful helper, not as something you're confined to. Now, just I guess one last thing before we move on to the next person is that the first approximately 20 pages in this little booklet are instructions about how I made the deck, the use of spreads, how I aggregated some of the cards together, and I'll show you some slides in just a few minutes. But let's continue with you guys pulling your cards. So, Mike, thank you for allowing Jean to go. She was off screen, so I didn't see her hand. Please.
Well, I pulled the negative pole of Pluto. I actually have Pluto energy in my chart.
Yep.
And
yep.
So and so it's menacing. So I was thinking, okay, this must mean I'm thinking too much and not should be doing something else. And the positive pole is prodigy. I've been trying to look for projects to do that might be useful to other people, technology or something. I haven't found anything yet, but I've been looking for years. And I got a whole car full of stuff I'm getting rid of Saturday morning at a local ham fest. I don't know if that fits in. I mean, I go through a lot of logic trying to figure out what to throw. My prices are so cheap. I'm not coming back with any of that stuff. Everybody else prices it so they guarantee they're taking it back home, but I'm pricing it so cheap nobody can avoid those prices.
Let me just give you a synonym, Mike, about the positive pole. That's the genius of you right there. So instead of prodigy, it's genius. And that is a genius strategy, is price it to get rid of it. Because I agree with you. I have seen so many people say, well, it's worth this. And one of the first rules of economics is it's worth only what somebody's willing to pay for it.
All right.
Yeah. Right. And so many people don't quite get that. And then, like you said, they bring it back home. Right. So good job. That's a great thing. Thank you for that. All right. Sarah or Phil, or let's see, and or Connie, who would like to? Phil, I think I saw you raise your hand. Did you want to comment? Or Tawana, for that matter?
I think you're muted, Phil.
Hmm.
Should be good.
His there's no mute image on his screen. I wonder if his
Volume.
Try again, Phil.
volume is turned up, maybe.
Oh, say
Well,
something.
Phil, what you fiddle, if you don't mind, I'll go to Tawana or Sarah. See about your volume setting.
Okay.
Tawana.
Well, I think I thought there's no, when you were talking about the terms, I realized I'm pretty cool with all the terms except for moving centers. I really don't get that. So, of course, I drew that. And then I drew a card that I'm like, oh God, this is embarrassing for me. So, I'm pretty busted. And I drew higher moving center in the negative pole of lust. So that's the card I picked. And I'm like, oh, all right, I just got to face up to it. So um, again, I know that the moving centers have to do with energy. It's sort of like chakras.
And
Um,
body.
and body. Okay. So, but the only thing that I could kind of think of about the lust is that I am having trouble with my lust for food. So, I'm really trying to, I lost a bunch of weight. I lost like 50 pounds and now it's creeping back on, and I'm struggling to keep, my weight down or even to lose more. So um, the opposite, the positive pole is harmony.
Mhm.
And that's probably being more comfortable with your body. Well, I mean, in general, I think harmony is mind, body, and spirit. So, um, so anyway, that was kind of what I got out of that.
Wonderful. So there's a few things I want to build on that
All
operation
right.
right there. Number one is I'm glad that you were willing to explore verbally what you did know or what you were uncertain of. It's better to actually get it out than worry about, the embarrassment or the shame or the fear, whatever, right? Okay, now some strategies, however, mechanically for dealing with the cards. If you ever run up against a card that somehow doesn't make sense that you're unclear about, feel free to go into your deck, as I am, and I just pulled a card for you, and notice it's the intention card. Excuse me,
Okay.
it's the inspiration card. In the positive pole of intention. Now, let me just ask you. Now, I pulled it. I should have had you do it, admittedly. But my point being is if ever a single card is confusing to you, feel free to reach into the deck and pull another one and
Okay.
see if it offers you more clarification together.
Right, because this did confuse me. Um, uh, but okay, so intention. I guess I'm still, I still think it's referring to my relationship with food. I don't know.
It sounds like you're having a disharmonious relationship
Yes, yes,
to food and your body.
right.
And it sounds like, given how hard you've worked on the material plane, another term that some Michael channels use, and I use it synonymously, is we can also call it the physical center. So it's
Okay,
literally much more about processing things through your body,
okay,
and about the body. Well, whereas all the centers, of course, are energy placements that come through. But nonetheless, this is saying, it's focusing, on more of your physical condition and your sense of action and interaction with the energy of yourself. So in
Well,
a lot of ways, even your guessing was very good.
I can you explain a little bit about what and where the higher moving center is?
Well, so this is good. So I'll use this illustratively and say that this is where if we default to using the Michael's teachings structurally, we can get more information. Good. Thank you for showing that. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you look, if Tuano, if you would show that again, this is the inside, this is the overleaf chart rendered in color of the cards themselves. And the higher moving center is the king's center. So it's under the gold um, um, column.
Okay, okay,
And in the Michael teachings, since it's a center, we're talking about, the energy fields and how we receive energy. Since it's a higher center, generally those are the ones that affect us, kind of at the more spiritual realm.
okay.
So, and by the way, I'm giving you Michael terminology now about this card. And I illustrate it this way because the card has its face value, like we just explored, but you could also dive into the Michael teachings and say, okay, what about this card? Well, it's a centering. So with the centers, we're talking about non-physical energetic fields that make up, our mind-body complex from essence down into form.
Right.
Okay, that's centers as a category. Then we could say, all right, well, this is the king center. And when we know about the king center, is that, obviously, this is about our sense of well-being, our sense of maximum potential feeling of serenity and full beingness. Now, for those of you who are ever athletes, and whoever have heard of the runner's high, or that full on place where everything just seems to kick in and you're in that place of personal synchronicity, or in sync with self, perhaps is a better way of saying it. That is that sense of inner harmony that I'm talking about with that. And where people will go after something similar. And one of the reasons that I use the term lust is because they're going for a stimulus to give themselves that zing of
Oh,
pleasure, that zing of, just kind of sensual, overwhelming feeling of delirium. That's what kind of the negative pole is talking about. Is it bad or wrong or sinful? No, not at all. It's seeking an external event to make an internal feeling.
ah,
And guess what? I too, being a struggler with food, completely relate to that, and can be a struggler with sexual energy. Then it comes down to talking about the chakra. The higher moving center is the second chakra, which interestingly enough is also our sex center.
right.
And in some versions of the teaching, some of the channels call the higher moving center the sexual center. So just so you know, we've just peeled away quickly a lot of potential angles of how to evaluate that card.
Right.
So thank you, Twana. Anything else?
Yeah.
Any other comments? Okay,
No,
good.
no, thank you.
Okay, very good. Phil, how about you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Ah, magic. So I was pleasantly surprised. I got the Elder card
Uh-huh.
in the positive pole. And interestingly, when you mentioned that we were going to pull a card, my mind went to two things. One, I'm going through a difficult period right now. And it's like, I don't know what my future is going to look like. Um, and the other thing was that I have some ideas now about what I want to do with sculpture and which I've done in the past. So anyway, it was nice to see that card. It gave me some comfort. And the negative pole of antiquated to me means you're not relevant. You know, your life's not relevant. So
Yeah, I look at the elder card, or the old soul card, obviously, and I use the euphemism there because for other people who are outside this system, the concept of old might have a certain connotation, whereas elder has in many, historic, shamanistic, or tribal associations, the meaning that I want it to have, which is, respecting our elders, the fact that they are a font of experience and wisdom, and the potential for us as older souls to actually potentially find the kind of fulfillment which, eventually in this teaching, as we talk about cycling off. And it's not to say that, we're going to cycle off this, we're going to cycle off this. The next card after this, of course, is the cycle off card, which means death. But at least in terms of the greater scheme of soul aging in general, I want to go back to you for a moment and acknowledge I'm delighted that you had an uplift with the information.
yeah.
But I also want you to notice, and you said it, so thank you for reporting it, that when you were thinking about pulling a card, automatically you had some inner messages come up. And whether you liked those messages or they were messages of foreboding or just a reaction from some part of you, those are often worth noting as just, again, a placeholder or a marker saying, oh, wow, that was interesting. Not, and it was just even pulling the card. It wasn't even seeing the card yet. Just even pulling the card that brought up that response. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So these are all meaningful aspects of you bringing awareness to utilizing the cards. And ultimately, for me, it's about bringing some love and some wholeness and some understanding and some compassion to ourselves, as well as through the vehicle that I called Getting Gotten. Some part of us gets recognized or seen, or the words or the images on the card describe something to us, reflect something back to us, then we've gained momentary benefit. And I want to emphasize again, folks, the good news is these are all situational. They're all situational. So in other words, in 10 minutes, we pick another card and the meaning and the energy and your energy may have changed. So these are just about individual moments of reflection and snapshots. So thank you, Phil. Anything else that you want to comment on that?
No, it's good. Thank you.
Good. All right. Thank you. So Sarah, and was there anybody else I missed? I guess we got everybody. So Sarah, you're up next.
All right, I guess it's me. So I got scholar on the negative pole, which is theory. You can't see it. There it is.
You go.
And then the positive pole is knowledge. And immediately with seeing those two words, that quote, "We're drowning in information while starving for wisdom," popped into my head, which I heard a long time ago, way before the world got as crazy as it is now. And number of applications. One is I really do struggle to not get locked into doom scrolling or info scrolling or anything. I'm looking for something and all of a sudden, ooh, squirrel. And there's an interesting headline, or there's this, or there's that, and what's going on, and blah, 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 blah. That's why I really try to not go on Facebook, because I could just get lost. So there's that scale. And then on my own personal scale, I'm working again and I'm feeling really good about what I'm doing. But there are times where I feel like I am going down the rabbit hole to, knowledge is about, well, maybe you need some more information. Actually, both descriptions say, maybe you need some more information. Maybe you need some more training. And I don't know that I need more training right now, but it's more about filtering through and choosing the information and not taking 3 times as long to put a PowerPoint together to give a presentation, because I can be a perfectionist, and just really focus on what's important, what does the audience need, and not just getting all caught up in it. And I've got a lot of overleaves. I'm a Sage Artisan Essence Twin, but my overleaves have a lot of scholar in them. And that keeps coming up for me when I'm doing my work, is I get really interested in the subtlety and the nuances and the details. So.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. And notice, folks, how clear Sarah was and doing something that may come up in your conversations, especially to the degree to which you may be doing these readings for folks who know their overleaves, or you yourself know your overleaves, like Sarah's reporting. And that is that they can typify or point out tendencies. She picked a few tendencies that were, something more in the way of not just situational, but, characteristic and ongoing for her. And she was able to elaborate that. And for you, if you're the listener in a circumstance where you're doing a reading for someone, encouraging that, or saying, if say we had multiple cards on the table, you can say, do any of these other cards specifically seem to accent or augment the way that you experience these characteristics? Or if it was the first card and more cards are to follow, it might be that the spread you choose, or the spread you're making up, might be you can think of it as the adjectives or the adverbs, the enhancers that are giving more definition and rounding out that first card. But nonetheless, that little soliloquy, that self-exploration and explanation is great. That's what we're really shooting for with these. So just to take a little quick check, and please just like nod heads. By the way, Connie Meyer, I want to acknowledge you're welcome to chime in, but I also know you're not feeling well. And so if that's, if you'd rather not, then we just won't see you on screen, but I want to acknowledge you're here. Connie is going to chime in. Okay. Oh, where is she? I thought I saw her hand raised. Yes, she is. Okay.
I'm still breathing, but I'm
You're
not.
still breathing. Good.
So
Good.
I'm lurking and learning.
Good. That's great. I'm glad, Connie. I just, if you might be an ascended master and just, have risen to another plane of existence, which on the internet would mean, and perhaps another website or another channel, right? So, did you have a card that you picked by chance?
I did pick a card.
Oh. Care to share? If you got the voice for it.
The card is moving.
Moving center. Okay.
And I picked it in the negative, frenetic.
Okay. Frenetic.
I do feel like it resonates for me somewhat. I'm feeling a little frenetic because I feel like I have a lot of things to do, but all I want to do is be in bed.
Mm-hmm. So your brain is out of sync with what your body needs then, is that right?
Exactly.
Right.
So it's just the way it is. So.
Well, I'm glad you decided to chime in. And by the way, when you look at the image in that poll, I'm just curious, what could you report to the group what it is? Because it makes me smile. I know what the image is. I know these cards pretty intimately at this point.
Well, it's a very frenetic design of jagged edges. And on the productive, it's somebody surfing, riding the waves.
Mm-hmm. Good.
I think for me, it's just reminding me that if I need my body to rest, I have to go to bed, and shouldn't be trying to do too many things because I don't have the headspace for it. So,
okay.
No, I think it was
well.
helpful.
Thank you for joining us from bed, And please feel free to just, relax and enjoy and absorb this way.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. You bet. Oh, good. Well, I'm glad everyone got a chance to share. So, does everyone somewhat like the way that we have gone through this? Again, you can nod your heads, or if you have a comment, you can make it. I'm going through this. I want you to feel like you're participating, like you're actually using these things, and then I'll just add information on top of it. Okay, good. All right, thank you. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take about 10 minutes. Jean, did you raise your hand, or we're just stretching out?
No, it was me.
Stretching,
Oh, it
sorry.
was you. Okay, Tawana. Thank you. Go ahead.
Uh, so can you tell us about the moving center? What it is, where it is? Just
Sure. Okay.
quickly.
So interestingly enough, you had the higher moving center. So that's the second chakra. The moving center is the third chakra. The moving center is also called the physical center, which is kind of really apropos because Connie is literally sick. Her
Right.
body, her physicality is knocked out. And the image of the positive pole, so the moving center, first of all, is one of the 7 energy fields or chakras, right? And it's the one that applies to the body. It is also the one that applies to motion. And right now, she said her brain, her fifth chakra, her intellectual center, is yammering away, telling her things that she should be doing. And her body's just going, no, I don't think so. And so what happened? Well, she pulled it in the negative pole, indicating there's some conflict there. There's some, we can call it even dissonance, right?
Right.
To use the term. So there's this, this conflict between these two centers. And fortunately, she was able to name it out loud for herself. And I'm hoping that my best intention for Connie is in naming it out loud, it released some of that inner conflict and allowed her to relax and just be in a calmer, more restful state, as well as hopefully, enjoy the interactions of everybody else here in the class and absorb that for herself. Did that give you enough of both an explanation of the moving center as well as the contrast to, say, the higher moving center, Twana? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. By the way, folks, just a little Zoom piece of information. In the course of the class, if you want to raise your hand or make some kind of a comment on something, non-verbally, you can go down to the at the bottom of the screen. There's a list of commands or controls, and it's called react. And then if you click on it, you will see that one of those options is something called raise hand. And I'm going to do it for you right now. You can see up in my the upper left corner of my screen that the hand image is coming up. Why that's really useful is that even though you're more than welcome to literally raise your hands, as you know from looking at Facebook. Now, for instance, it's really interesting. I'm not sure why Phil's screen on my screen is the one that's occupying the major position, but it is, and he's not even in the room. So there's something going on in Zoom that's doing that.
Is it the whole screen for you, Steve?
For me, yeah, it's the whole screen.
What you might have done is you might have pinpointed him if you go to his screen and hit those 3.
Yeah, no, I wasn't pinned because thank you, Gene. He was not pinned because I know that feature, and every time you guys are coming on, you're showing on the big screen. So, in other words, it's randomizing according to the speaker. So it's just interesting as I'm speaking, I'm not, for whatever reason, Zoom isn't allowing me. But when you just spoke, it did. What I was getting back to, folks, about the hand raise thing is that when you raise your hand electronically, what it does is I can see it on my screen and it pinpoints you. Instead of, I might lose you in the top scroll, which is how I have it displayed on my screen. of the 10 people that are here because I can only see 5 of you at a time. So I just ask that you would do that because then this way I can do you the courtesy of actually answering your question and not accidentally skipping over you like it did with Gene with Mike. So anyway, just a little instruction about our Zoom format and how we might use it in the class. Let me pause for a moment and ask you, are there any questions so far? I'm going to jump next as just as a summary into a few slides about the overview of how, how we'll continue in the class. And then we'll have a volunteer and we'll actually do a reading, a handout, a handout, a card layout, and then jointly evaluate it. But first, again, okay, Gene, yes.
So I just did a quick search. I don't know if it's helpful or not, but if you go up into your right-hand corner under View
Mm-hmm.
and make sure it's on Gallery versus Speaker.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea. I usually like the speaker setting because I like being able to see you all front and center. So when the
Oh, wow.
speaker,
Okay.
for me personally, whereas with the gallery, yes, I can see all of you in a checkerboard. And if we have more people in a course one night, say, we double the number, I would probably put it on gallery or maybe even multi-speaker. But I generally like the speaker because I like to make you guys the star, at least for
Oh,
me.
okay. Sorry, I thought you weren't liking
No,
that.
thank you for investigating that. It was just curious, as I said, when I became the speaker and Phil was even out of the room, it just stuck on Phil's screen for me. That's all I was saying. So anyway, okay. Any other questions either so far about the course or or are we good to go? Okay. I will assume that since I'm scrolling through everybody. All right. So what I'm going to do now, folks, is I'm going to share and I'm going to uh, go first to my PowerPoint and then I'm going to go to use one of the okay. Now, can everyone see the application, the fact that I have a PowerPoint slide on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, and it's not blocked. Okay, very good. There's some weird ways that Zoom
No, it's
t
clear.
tends. Yeah, good. All right. So, I want to just point out to you a few resources here. I've already mentioned the fact that, and you see them shown there with the card itself, and right next to it is the pocket guide. I'm holding that up myself. Um, and you can always use the pocket guide most immediately. Now, down in the lower left-hand corner is what Quantum was kind enough to hold up, and it's the interior of the threefold flyer that I sent with the cards. That's it right there. Kath is also holding it up. And what many of you will notice is that this is actually an overleaf chart, but that it's been color coded. Now it's beyond the overleaf chart because I also, put categories in there called augments, covenants, and soul age or the cycle cards. And obviously, those are not specifically overleaves per se, but they are cards in this deck. Now, what I want you to know as a reference point is that at any given time, you can look at the columns and rows and notice that they have color associations. And they have color associations on purpose because remember way back in messages and then more elaborate in more messages from Michael. Michael would elaborate the fact that say that discrimination is the artisan goal, for instance, or as we mentioned earlier, higher moving center is the king centering, or that say stoic is the server attitude. Now, when we're reading the cards, for those of you who are Michael adepts, and again, you're Michael students who've interacted with this a long time, you intuitively know, oh, even if you're not getting the main role card, if you're seeing a number of cards that are coming up of a certain color, you can pretty much assume that what Michael or whatever guide you asked to do this session with you is giving you an indication that it may be predominantly saying, pay attention to this particular energy group or this particular energy field. So I'm giving you the example here of saying, what if there were 3, 4 of these green column cards, which are server cards? Well, that means the entirety of your reading has a definite service kind of overtone. But also, how is it service, projected in the world, or is it service about, more inner on the self? Like, excuse me, the goal of reevaluation, of course, is usually about something that we are dealing with the self. But if a person who you're reading for drew it, what might they be reevaluating or going through or going over? Now, on this chart, you notice I don't have the positive and negative poles. I just have this as the card label, the main card label, and then its color. What I also want to point out to you on this chart as a reference, and again, this is some of the subtleties that I programmed or built into this deck that you can see if you start examining the card and the corners of each card, is you'll notice that all of these have identifying symbols for the columns and or which I call the sets, and or the groups, which are are those represented horizontally. Now, we'll go through and return to see, those, but I want you to be able to have this as a resource that might be useful to you, so, etc. Another thing, over on the right side of this slide is the ebook that I wrote with this called Motivations, a Feedback System. And what this is a 500-page version of the 100-page version of the pocket guide. Now, I will be sending this out to you as a link, and let me just tell you what it is in essence. It is essentially just a longer list of the synonyms to each card, and it is a larger number of framed responses under each of the poles. So in other words, in the same way that you might pick up the pocket guide as a brief or short list of responses or synonyms, the motivations handout has a lot more. So, and then lastly, and this is where I want to take you next. Many of you know that I have a site that's dedicated to the Michael cards, interestingly enough, called michaelcards.com. And when I press it, I think I'm going to stop this share, and I'm going to go to sharing the website so you have a look of it. Okay. So this is the Michael Cards site, and it just so happens that I picked a card for the class, by the way. So I'm literally going to take my turn, so to speak. And whenever you use, and I'll show you about the layouts that are pre-programmed on here. So this is an electronic version of the cards, completely functional. And I have them designed by layouts. And in this drop-down menu over on the right-hand side are all the layouts that I've created for this deck. Now, many of these same layouts are noted in the both the pocket guide and the motivations ebook. But when I had my good friend Victor, who is a web designer, come up with this app, and I'm hoping eventually that I'll have this app available to you for your phones. We concocted all of these various kinds of pre-made spreads that some of you can probably recognize by the verbiage of them that are reflective of, of concepts in the Michael teaching. So motivational moment is literally just what it means, is, picking a card or having an idea on its own. And that's what I did here. So let's just drop down to this. So when I asked, notice I said, here's my question. I said, tell me about today's course. And I did it in that little ask box right there. And this is where it came come up with. Then it says, consider. So it tells you about the placement of the card. And it says, and so it says, consider for a moment or for the day the thought behind this card. Perhaps it applies to you or to someone you care about or interact with. Take a breath, allow this energy to pass through you, and notice, what are you experiencing? What are you sensing in the body is the most powerful alert. Whatever you're sensing in the body is your most powerful alert that something deeper is being awakened. Now that's the instruction with the single card layout, right? So here's what it came up with. So the card came up with, in the positive pole, it came up with a chief features card, stubbornness. And it came up in the positive pole of willfulness. Now, for those of you who know this teaching and know the synonyms, you'll know that in other terms, the positive pole is often cited as determination. That's fine by me. If that's a term that works better for you, that's fine. But I chose willfulness is because I consider the chief feature cards as all ego defenses. And so our will is usually something we bring to bear because we don't like what's going on. We're trying to overrun it, right? So we're being willful. Now, willfulness is not bad. So here's what the response is that came up. It says pushing for change is a hell of a lot better than being pulled by it. Lean into it, or it will lean on you. Now, what I took from this, because this is my card for the day, is that, we are dealing with the Michael teaching out of your familiar context that you may not, be readily familiar with, right? So I interpreted this to mean that, we may have to do some, some applications, some willful learning, put in some effort to try and stretch our context a little bit, me and how I teach, and maybe you and how you understand these terms. And by the way, I want to just point out there's nothing wrong with how you utilize this or apply your own meanings. Nothing at all. I just want you to know that, there are many layers and many ways of doing that. So this online resource, the Michael Motivation Cards, then is available to you at any time online, including, by the way, you can always go through your phone browser, and at least my programmer allowed it so that each of the individual cards would fill your screen one at a time, but it's still a little bit more cumbersome than, say, a good, useful. Okay. One last thing on this I want to show you, if it helps, is that under the Michael Cards info, and by the way, I have duplicates of this on my themichaelteaching.com site, is the cards by name. And if you do that, you can see literally the entire list of all the cards, positive and negative pole, all the way down. And so if any reason you had the thought come to mind, gee, I wonder about this, well, you can bring up the full list and see them all in order. Obviously, starting off by the number on the left-hand category, by the name on the card itself, and then, of course, the positive pole featured by the plus sign and the negative pole featured by the minus sign. Then, if you wanted to click on any of these, let's take Tawana's, for instance, the higher moving center, card 39. If I click on this, it literally takes me to that page. And notice one other thing I did here. by the way, that is not too often featured when if someone's just listening to me do a reading. And that is, I gave it a slogan because I like slogans. I like aphorisms. And I think that these, kind of felt the energy of the card. So notice I feel good. I knew that I would. For those of you who remember that old Brown song, I got
I
you,
feel
right?
good.
Exactly. Thank you, Mike. Hit it, baby.
Where's my guitar?
There you go. Now, if you scroll down, what you'd see here is I have a description of all the images in the corners. There are 4 corners, and I have an image in each. Okay. And these are also listed in your pocket guide, but notice that I use the crown as the image for the king set. So when there's any gold card that you came across up in the upper left-hand corner, you're going to have the crown image indicating it's part of the king set. If you were to look and say, aha, so what else have I got here? Oops, sorry. Is the concentric circles in the upper right-hand corner, the person in there, that's a goal. That's the symbol for goals. Or excuse me, for the centers group, rather. Pardon me, not the goals. And because a person has all of these concentric energy fields, so that's what I selected for centers. Down in the lower left corner, I chose the pharaoh, meaning the exalted or cardinal qualities. As the large scale. Then in the lower right-hand corner, I used, and many of you will recognize that for the 4 axes, I assigned one of the 4 major card images that are used in our standard playing cards. So for me, both the action roles of warrior and king and all the overleaves underneath are going to have the club, meaning something physical, something, indicating, boom. So in any case, that's on any of these things, then I go into larger descriptions about the positive and negative poles. You'll notice I've got 16 possible statements about the positive pole. I've got 9 about the negative pole. And here's a fun thing that, again, thank you, my friend Victor Anderson. You notice it says card context, beauty, right underneath the image of the card. And I have a plus sign and minus sign that are links. Well, if you click plus sign, what it does, it'll start scrolling through all the individual statements that are associated with this card. If you do the negative pole, it'll start scrolling through all the negative pole statements associated with this card. So I offer you this, by the way, as to let you know that if you and a friend ever wanted to just get online, you could use this as your source of reading. This website. Just type, the question in, blah, 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 blah. Select which particular type of spread you might want, and then click on the Ask Michael button. And by the way, you can do that up there. You can also do it over here, on this side. By the way, just so you know, for whatever reason, we have a little glitch in this. I have to erase the word ask, otherwise it'll look like it'll show up in your, question. So don't worry about it. That'll be fixed when I get with my web designer tomorrow. But so does everyone now at least have a little bit of a sense that this site exists and you can utilize it just like you would, the cards, but it has some electronic features that, make some interesting options for you. Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to stop the screen share, and I'm going to just give you, anybody have any questions so far about either the tangible deck of the cards, or the pocket guide, or the use of these cards specifically. Anything come up for anyone, or should we move on? Okay. Well, good. Either I've engaged you with interest or baffled you with bullshit. So, hopefully more the former than the latter. But I never know for sure. I am a sage, so I ask forgiveness. Okay. Um, a few things I just want to mention. Um, I'm going to pick up the cards, and I want to ask one of you to volunteer. Um, and we'll do just a simple 2 or 3 card spread in the last 15 minutes that we've got together. Does someone want to volunteer? Just to raise your hand and say yes, I'll go. Okay, anyone? Wow. All right, Barbara, good job. Thank you. And Barbara, let me just ask you, even without just using your intuition, usually a 2 card spread is a good for yes, no, or me and the other person. Um, a 3 card spread would be like me, the other person in our relationship, or it could be a time spread like past, present, and future. Um, it also might be, a if I do it, if I don't do it, what will happen? So one of those things. Intuitively, do you have a sense of which number which number of cards you might want me to draw for you?
Yeah, do the two. Do a yes, no.
Okay, great. And did you want to, before I start shuffling? So here's an instruction, folk. I would ask the person, I would hand my deck to Barbara and say, okay, why don't you hold these in your hands? And just, the person, you could say, do you want to say it aloud or do you want to just hold on to it in your own mind? Either way is fine with me. I never care. Oh, kitty. Okay. So here's what I would advise you to do if the person asked you to shuffle or you had them shuffle. Some of you have heard me say this before. These are 3 by 5 cards and they're card stock. So they're big, they're lunky, and they can tear. So when you do a shuffle or they do a shuffle, please tell them don't do like playing cards where you do the fan. Because if you do, that's the easiest way to bend them or break them or tear them. So the way I do it is one of a couple of ways. I do the flop method where I just, hold them together and I literally hand over hand. And by the way, what I will do is I will flip the deck part of the way, part way through. So I'm changing the poles, right? Another way to do it is I'd have them lay it down and then just choose 3 or 4 stacks and then stack them again in a different order. And then the last way is referred to as a wash. And a wash is what we did as little kids, right? We just took the deck, we put it on a flat surface, and we just mixed them all up. And then chose whatever cards we were going to get out of that. So I encourage you just to remember that, just to keep your own cards from being torn or damaged. Because let me pose a question to you honestly. If we get a damaged card, what do we begin to notice about that card? Anybody?
We remember
You
it.
remember it, right? And if you like the card, you might just say, oh, yeah, that one, right? So you start biasing your own readings. But if you don't like the card, what do you also do? Bias your own readings because you may avoid it, right? So this way, keeping them intact is the best way to do that. Okay, so Barbara, um, I'm going to go like this. I'm going to fan the cards to you. And the way I do this on our little class line is I'll run my finger over it and you just tell me where to stop. Oops, wait a minute. Let me come over here. There we go.
Okay, stop.
Okay. And there's one right there. And I'll put it face down. All right. And I'll do it again. Oh, come over here. Okay. I'll do it again. I'll start from this side. And I'll come back. And you tell me where to stop.
Okay, stop.
Okay. So this is the first one. Okay. Now, of these 2 cards, it's okay. You don't have to have these. No, you don't have to have these in order. So you could have decided that the second one is the first one you want to see as your whatever one, and then and vice versa. So the 2 cards I picked, were they 1, 2, or was it the other way around?
1, 2.
Okay. So I'm going to lay them down. I'm going to turn on my camera here, folks, so you can see them. I will say that technology is pretty cool these days. So I'm going to share the screen and I'm going to have a second camera. And I am listening to my bot. Oh, good. Thank you, Connie. I just looked at the. Um, all right, where are you, Steve? Okay, so I want to go to advanced. I want to go to second camera, and I want to share. Yay! And believe it or not, folks, I have it is the strangest trying to figure out the lighting in this room. So I apologize for glare because I have tried different ways. It's not even actually a lot of light in this room, but boy, do these cards do glare. So let me pull them back a little bit and see if I can get the glare off of them somewhat. Um, all right. So do you both do you all see the two cards? So the first
Yes.
one that
Yes.
okay. So the first one that Barbara chose was reevaluation, and that's a goal. That's the server goal. And then she chose intellectual center. And that is, of course, a center. So we have a goal and a center as our two cards. And Barbara, you said that the first card, which is simplification, is the way I flipped them, was your first meaning. Did you, by any chance, either want to share your question or what you're noticing about this might be? What it either your question or your or what your reaction is to this
My
first card.
my question was about the cause of death of my daughter-in-law who died just I'm going to say 3 weeks ago, May
Mm.
12th.
Oh, wow.
It's still not clear. They're doing, a bunch of tests to figure out what it was. So that was my question of what was behind that choice or
Oh,
that
wow.
accident, or we don't know yet whether it was a choice or an accident or whatever. Um,
Okay.
so looking at that reevaluation would tend to indicate, a soul or a body decide and making a choice,
Yeah.
and coming to a fork in the road, if you will, is what it
Hmm.
says to me is, and I would think it would be more withdrawal than simplification, but it's sort of a yes, no choice.
So
I'm gonna
let
I'm
me
gonna
do
stay or I'm gonna go, you
let me
know.
do show you do something, by the way. Folks, by all means, remember these are visual Rorschachs.
Mhm.
So it can be very helpful to turn over the card in the reading. Thank you, Barbara, for not for saying that. So we turn it over and we look at the opposite meaning, the opposite image, even more specifically. So withdrawal, and boy,
Mhm.
there's few withdrawals bigger in life than actual death, isn't there?
Mhm.
Notice does the image that I chose for withdrawal strike you in any way?
Um, well, that one's more a hiding,
Hmm.
or well, like which could be, somebody just, hiding from life or hiding from whatever's going on, as opposed to making a positive choice. That's interesting. It's an interesting image. I haven't pulled that card before, but that's an interesting image.
Yeah, yeah. I thank you for the exploration. I appreciate that. I don't pretend to know what it actually is, but I'm, instructively speaking, it's a very powerful question you posed.
Mhm.
And, from the standpoint of just, the possible feedback that again, I apologize for the glare, folks. But the possible feedback, that's why I, asked you about the image, because I know that when I came upon this image in creating these cars, it struck me as one of the most powerful. Because what's ironic, ladies and gentlemen, of course, is there isn't an ostrich ever that would put its head in the sand. We humans might, but to hide from ourselves, as Barbara so distinctly stated. But we put this aphorism to this image quite frequently. So, just out of curiosity, then the second card, Barbara, about contemplation, the intellectual center, contemplation or rationalization. Is it in the right pole when you look at it?
Um, I don't know.
Okay.
And again, because that's just, there's still unknowns until, the people that have to evaluate and make a decision decide what, what happened or make a,
Okay.
what, I mean, whatever they do to come to a conclusion to say it looks like this is what happened.
Okay.
So it's still, um, that takes some contemplation, that takes some rationalization, that takes some thought. So
Hmm.
all three of those make sense in the way people, a coroner would go ahead and come to, I think this is the most likely cause.
It is certainly a mental deliberation
Mhm.
of this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, Barb, right now, when you said you wanted two cards, did you kind of intuitively have labels for each of what these cards meant? In other words, the placeholder in your own mind that we filled with these specific, cards.
Well, I kind of go back and forth with, maybe it was this or maybe it was that, or, but all indications are it could be a couple different things that happened.
Uh-huh.
Nobody else was there. So, it was, we, we just don't know until, and I'm trying to keep an open mind until the coroner comes back and said, it looks like this is, what they think it was.
Okay.
Uh,
So as a teaching intervention here, or moment rather than interpretation about these cards or your question, this is interesting, isn't it? When we have a binary, we know from this teaching, one of the problems with binaries is that, we can get into, a paralysis or, a locked in conflict.
mhm.
Now, this is just an offer, but is there any potential that you feel like me picking a third card for you would be appropriate here? And you don't have to. I'm just giving you the option. If
No,
it
I think it's an interesting, I think it's an interesting draw given the question.
Okay, very good.
That's it gives some things to think about. I mean, I've obviously thought a lot about it.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
but it gives, I think that what showed up was definitely appropriate for the question.
Hmm.
Um, and, you know, and I don't have an answer because I don't know the yes or no. So there is, at this point, there is no definite answer. People and other people have, different opinions, but until, the coroner comes back and says that it looks like this, everybody's just guessing because
Yes, of course.
nobody really knows at this
Of
point.
course.
Because
Yes,
I won't go into all the details, but it just that nobody knows for sure.
of course. Of
So
course.
yeah, but
No, thank.
I think the cards were appropriate and I think also helpful. So
Oh, good.
thank
Good.
you.
I'm glad. I'm glad because, folks, the thing I want to give you all permission on is you don't have to make these fit to anything. If they don't seem to give you any clues or resonance or direct you anywhere and they fall flat, they fall flat.
Mhm.
It just
Yeah, no, these
is.
definitely did not fall flat. I think they both are definitely appropriate for the question.
Oh, I'm delighted. I'm
It's
delighted.
interesting to see. To me, it's interesting to see that happen.
Hmm.
It's always interesting to me to see that happen, but it's, anyway, thank you.
You bet, Barbara. Thank you. And by the way, I just wanted to know, I wasn't suggesting that was happening for you, but it was one of these commentary moments that just made itself available to offer the
Sure,
contrast as well.
sure.
Um,
Appreciate that.
so yeah, absolutely. So, folks, in our last few minutes, I'm going to unplug this camera and I'm just going to go over a few final points before we, say ta for this evening, right? Um, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share the screen again. Um, and oh, yeah, you are. Oh, good. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go back to our a couple of my slides here, just a couple, to finish up with. So I've told you all the resources. Here's one of them, of course, on the screen. Um, and I just, I'd like to make this analogy for everyone who's ever used the cards. I mean, I apologize, it may be blotting out what the top line was saying, but what it is saying is,
It's clear. It's
no, it
clear
is
here.
okay. For
Yeah.
me, the controls are in the way. But anyway, it says, the Michael teaching came through on a Ouija board, a form of divination. Uh, and so, why not cards? And that's what, Michael had been bugging me almost for 20 years in my teaching of this material. And then finally they told me, you're going to do this art project. So I did. The major thing, is it is literally, the same materials, but organized, in a different way. And oops, wait, did I just lose my sharing of screen? Come on back
Oh,
here.
we got it. We can see it.
Okay, good. No, mine did on my side. Thank you, though. Um, the I want you to understand the uses of the cards in case you ever wanted to share these. If anybody wants to learn the Michael teaching, the 78 cards that they cards that they coached me to label, they've been were working with me for a long time on it. These are the key terms of the basic Michael teachings. A person could use them as flashcards for literally learning the foundation structure of the stuff. The next part, of course, is it's a visual Rorschach. It's a projection test. What does it trigger on us that we then see in the cards, right? There's a good old-fashioned Rorschach symbol. But also, remember my emphasis on the concept of synonyms and word association. One of the things that you and that other person are trying to do is you're trying to stimulate them participating and sounding out verbally what it is that they might be seeing or experiencing with the cards. In the beginning, many of you had very pleasant, uplifting kind of experiences, reporting your cards, and I was very happy about that. But folks, I just really want to acknowledge that Michael said that sometimes these images, these cards, might really cause a person in profound recognition something very important, that it has depths of layer and many meanings for them too. So helping to keep them talking. The other thing, and I'll just leave it on this note, is one of the ways intellectually you might think of these cards, is they detect, they describe, and they can also direct. In other words, when you're posing a question or a person is posing a question, and the structure that I've imbued in the various, by the way, I call the term spreads and layouts interchangeably. That means the arrangement of the cards when you lay them out, because they have different structure, and then the cards become the fillers in those placeholders. But when you build on a given selection, Barbara did a 2 structure. Notice it tended to go to detect and describe first. It pulled out some energies of the situation, and then it described with the terms. Now the last piece, direction, there are several of the layouts that are really designed for people making an interrogatory about something that they really want to get feedback or direction on, right? So those 3 things are what these cards can do. They can detect energies, they can describe them to you, or you can pose a question that helps direct, that gives you direction about something. And as I said, think synonyms. Start off with the 3 words. I mean, that's a great helping place, right? Then look at the pictures on the card. Then look at the images in the corner. And you can get any number of, prompts from that. But the main thing is, lastly, is, when you're reading with other people or for yourself, remember, it's about a vehicle to conversation. It's about talking about what you're seeing and what you're experiencing. And some of you are really good questioners. You're already counselors in one form or another. Use your ability to answer questions. Use your own interpretation and intuition that might be triggered by that specific card to pose questions. This is not a prison to lock meaning into. It's a scaffolding to help a person, identify things and build meaning on. And then, to that degree, if it triggers some emotion for them, make it safe for them to, have their emotions, and you just witness them. And that's really the whole purpose of me designing this card. That's the whole purpose that Michael and the consortium thereafter came up with me about why to develop these cards, is making this a much more interactive and dynamic forum, situationally speaking, interpersonally speaking, about what's going on for folks. So, while we've reached the end of tonight's course, I want to open that for any final questions that you might have. All right. Well, another thing then is pretty amazing to me is I'm pretty close to being on time. Uh, well, I want to thank you. And oh yes, Tawana, you have your hand raised. Question.
Yes. Will we be getting recordings of these classes?
A very good question. Here's what I can do, two levels of answering that. I can process the recording and send you a copy of the recording. I'm happy to do that as an MP3 file. The other thing that is my intention to do is, if YouTube hasn't done something weirder with their algorithm, I will upload these courses, each week to YouTube. So, you can literally watch the video with it. Now, one thing I am trying this class in 2025 that we've not had available to us before, and that is the transcript feature. And the transcript feature I have had on in the background, and I have been recording the transcript, and hopefully I can figure out how to download it. And so, in other words, you can have it auditorily, visually, and hopefully the transcript to read.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the times that I will miss at least once.
Of
So,
course. Of course. Yeah. So, okay. Well, gang, it's been lovely. Any final comments or questions for tonight?
Thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
First of all, you're absolutely welcome, and I'm delighted you're here, Barbara.
Phil
Yeah,
I want to just.
I'll be here next week. I thought I was going to have to miss, and it turns out my other meeting got rescheduled to another night. So
All
I'll be
right.
here all night. So it worked out perfect. So
Oh, that's great. That's great. Phil, you had a question, but you're muted, Phil.
I don't have a question anymore.
Oh,
I'm sure it's
okay.
in the email. Okay.
Okay, very good. All right, everyone. Well, I want to say ta-ta for tonight. We will reconvene here next Thursday night, the 12th, at 5 o'clock Western time, Pacific time, and 8 o'clock Eastern time. I don't think we have anybody in between, do we? We just got East Coasters and West Coasters. Okay. All right, gang. So I'll get to work on the recordings and different stuff like that, and I'll get emails out to you with links and so forth and so on. All right, thank you again. Appreciate you all coming. See you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye now.